Salute BookTube. Welcome to my channel. Thank you for being here, first of all. Um, Regulars of this channel will know that I had taken a hiatus. I was traveling and I wasn't doing a lot of booktubing, wasn't doing a lot of reading actually. But now I'm back, slowly getting back into the rhythm of making booktube videos. And I thought the best way to get my booktube legs back into it is to do a tag video. I was gone for quite a while, almost 2 weeks, and in that time, I had said, if you read my or watched my last video before I traveled, I said I would watch BookTube while I was away to just keep abreast, but that didn't happen. I was so busy with just things to do, and where I went, Baghdad, I actually have relatives, so um, and they insisted I stay at their place. So it was very rude of me if I was at their place and I was stuck on my iPad or on my cell phone just watching booktube videos. So I'm very behind in booktube videos, but I'm slowly trying to catch up and watch all the videos that I missed. Um, and some of them were tag videos, and then a few of them I was tagged by other booktubers. There were a couple, I don't know, maybe I'll do them in the future, but there was one specific tag by Andrew. I believe his name is Andrew. The channel is called You Could Be Reading More. I always mix up his channel name. Is it You Should Be Reading More or You Could Be Reading More? But I've got it now in front of me. It's You Could Be Reading More. Um, in fairness, he also messed up. He wasn't able to pronounce the name of my channel when he tagged me. Andrew, if that's your name, I think it's Andrew. If you're watching this, it's Saracen. Um I know it's a bit tricky, but Saracen is pretty much it was a derogatory term used by European crusaders in the Middle Ages to refer to the Arab Muslims. So that's where I got the name for the channel. But Andrew is actually an interesting booktuber. He's based out of Australia, um, which is very, very interesting. And he tagged me in the nonfiction November tag. I'll link Andrew's video, um, his tag video in the description below. The tag was originally created by Bookish Travels, and I believe it's an old tag that Andrew has reprised, um, and he graciously tagged me. And again, Andrew is very interesting because he's based in Australia, and a lot of the books that he mentions, a lot of the biographies and histories he reads are about Australia. He's very interested in the biographies of um, Australian prime ministers, which is a subject, Australian politics is a subject I know next to nothing about. So it's always interesting to watch his channel, to watch his videos, especially his Australian prime minister videos, um, uh, and just learn and know more about Australia. I've been to Australia once, but Australia is so large, it's a continent on its own. And I only went to the city of Melbourne. I had a friend who was having a wedding there. So that's all I saw of Australia, which isn't saying much. So I should be, I should go there again and actually explore the entire country one day, hopefully. Um, Andrew tagged me, and I thought I would answer the tags, the prompts. There are 8 prompts here, plus, yeah, 8 prompts plus the final one, which is to tag people, which we'll do at the end. Again, Australia, it's a fascinating country because it's very geographically distant, but that is also could be a good thing. I always felt that Australia is a place where if there was a nuclear apocalypse in the Euro-Asian slash African continent against, let's say, the Western Hemisphere, the North and South American landmass, there was a big nuclear fallout. Most of the survivors of that nuclear holocaust would probably make their way to Australia and to be the safe haven for the rest of humanity. Uh, I think there was a movie, I think it's called Waterworld. It's an older 90s movie, Waterworld, with Kevin Costner. and I think that's the premise. It's like the apocalypse, and the survivors of humanity are a mixed human, mixed fish sort of species that lives off Australia and the Antipod, the islands in the Pacific. So maybe, who knows? But again, thank you, Andrew, for tagging me. And let's get to the questions. Uh, and enough rambling from me. So the first prompt is, what motivated you to pick up your first nonfiction book, and can you remember it? Um, Again, regulars of my channel will know that my channel and what I read is mostly nonfiction, and it's mostly history. I'm a big history geek and nonfiction geek, and I really love that subject. So that's what I read mostly. And it started at childhood. I was just very good at history, and I just really loved the subject. I don't know what it was. Uh, I could get it, and I got it at an early age, and I enjoyed it. And it involves a lot of reading, and I just liked it. The specific question is the first one you ever picked up, and can you remember it? I don't know if there's a first one, but I have, because I've still maintained, you can't see it, but I've maintained my shelf of my childhood books. Most of them I've kept. I still have them. One nonfiction book I remember, one of the earliest I ever read, I do have, and I've shown this before, but I'll show it again. Um, it's called Explorers and Voyages of Discovery, and it's a Penguin book. I think this is a British publication. In the top there, what does it say? 100 questions and answers. And it's a children's book about exploration and about discovery. If we read the back, it says, how did early explorers find their way? Who first sailed right around the world? How do polar explorers survive? You will find the answers to these questions and many more inside this fascinating and colorful book. And it is a colorful book. You can see the cover. This is like a sort of European caravel. You can see the palm trees, beautiful sea. It's just a very beautifully made book. A lot of graphic, because it is a children's book. So there's a lot of graphics and images. So yeah, if we quickly go through the book. The first one is, who were the first explorers? So this is ancient maritime exploration. How did the early explorers find their way? Again, nice pictures of like a telescope and using birds. There's an astrolabe, using pigeons to relay messages. How did the Vikings travel? It gets into the Vikings. Again, very nice graphics. You can see the helmet and the dagger and the gold. And the next, who were the first Arab explorers? I think this is what really attracted me, because it's got, well, this is a little bit sort of a rich Arab merchant. That's supposed to be a rich Arab merchant. He's got sort of jewels hanging out of his turban, but I don't know how accurate that is. But again, beautiful photography, not photography, but images, very nice maps. The great Arab explorers who explored the Indian Ocean and monopolized the trade with the Far East, which is extremely wealthy part of the world, still is. Speaking of the Far East, who first made contact with China? You can see, so I think that's Kublai Khan and the Mongols. Again, linking the Middle East, linking East, the Far East with Europe and the West. You've got camels, just very beautiful images. Who were okay? Gets into the Europeans. When was the great age of exploration? So you get the caravels, Columbus, etc. Vasco da Gama. Who discovered America? Speaking of Columbus, there he is, the man himself. You can see the European ships with the crucifixes, very much sailing for God and gold. You can see him leaving Spain, and then it trails all the way to the New World, the so-called New World. Columbus was mostly in the Caribbean, mostly exploring the Caribbean. Who first sailed around the world? You've got Magellan. I actually recently, a couple of months back, read a biography of Magellan. It's a biography, and it's a biography of his trip around the world. I think it's by Louis Bergen. I think that's the author's name. I should have it in front of me. It would be nice to show. Maybe I can reach it quickly. Do I see it? I'm having trouble finding it, but it's somewhere here. I should have had it, but anyway, there's also Sir Francis Drake, the British explorer. Who were the conquistadors? You get all the flora and fauna that they discovered in the New World. You got the Incas and the Maya and the Aztec. Some nice Aztec art. Just wonderful. I mean, how can you not like this? Speaking of Andrew, you could be reading more. Who found out? Sorry, I'm reading it backwards. Who found out about Australia? You've got the kangaroo, you've got the Aborigine. There's James Cook, and then there's I think the Dutch explorer Tasman, Abel Tasman, and then it goes on and on. Who explored Africa? This is the height of British colonialism. Again, more camels with mountains as well, crocodiles. Just fascinating and very visually appealing. Then it gets to more recent exploration. How were polar regions explored? You got all the skiers and the whatnot. Again, how it was explored. Well, the answer is the most of Europeans who did the exploration started to adopt Inuit or native dress. How was the sea explored? There's some submersibles and some submarines, etc. And then I think this is the final chapter. How is space explored? You've got the shuttle, one of the NASA shuttles, and the astronauts and cosmonauts from Russia, the Soviet Union, the US, the Great War to discover, to explore space. Here I've got my childhood inscription. It says, when was the first rocket invented? I crossed it out and wrote where. The answer is the Chinese invented gunpowder, which they used to fire the first rocket in 1232. So I guess I answered the question with where it's China, but then there's the index, and then the back cover also very pretty. So yeah, that's a long way of saying that's one of the first books that I have that I remember as a nonfiction book that I greatly enjoyed. Let's go to prompt number 2. How do you choose your next nonfiction read? Initially, when I first, just because, again, I read as a child. When I entered high school, junior high and high school, I stopped reading. And then when I went to university, I got back into reading. So there was a gap. So when I got back into reading, reading nonfiction history mostly. But before BookTube, I would read just randomly. I'd be a mood reader and just pick up, if I went to the bookstore, I bought a book, I'd read it, or I felt like reading this, I'd read it. Now, with BookTube and me becoming a booktuber, I've started to choose your non-fiction read. I've been becoming very selective, trying to match my reading with the reading events that happen monthly, almost November, and this nonfiction November tag was done because November on BookTube is nonfiction November. That's one of the bigger events of November, of the month of November. But then others, so Historathon, which is a reading event that's a year long, that's divided into different epochs of history. This last quarter is I think the year 1830 to the present, or 1820 to the present. So just last month I was reading a biography of Queen Victoria. So BookTube has influenced my choice of what I read and how I read. Next year is the year 2026, is the 250th anniversary of the founding, not the founding, but the proclamation of the U.S., of the United States of America, the Declaration of Independence. So for the 250th anniversary, I think 2026, I've already mapped out what I'm going to read. I've got a bunch of American history books, American books on American politics that I want to read and clear out what I don't need and keep what I think is good. So 2026 is going to be a lot of American history reading. So that's exciting. And that, again, BookTube is helping me to choose nowadays. Prompt number 3. Do you take notes or annotate your nonfiction books? Not really, not as much as I should. And I should. I will annotate, uh, but not as much as I should. Now, again, because I'm doing booktube and I'm discussing what I read, usually at the end of the month, I do a sort of reading wrap up. I'm seeing myself annotating more because I need to mark where, if I want to quote something or share something with you guys. It's good to annotate so I can find it easily while I'm filming, because I make my films unedited. I just open the camera and start talking. Very little prep, a little preparation, but not a lot. So I've been doing a lot more annotating and note taking. Um, the other thing is I've also read via BookTube and YouTube in general. There's something called a common book. Uh, I forget the name. Common reader, a common book. It's sort of like a journal, but it's not a journal where you write your daily. It's where you take quotes from what you've read and put it in a journal and just record it there. And that's something I really want to do. It's probably a good resolution for 2026. Again, the actual name escapes me. Something like a common book journal, something like that. Maybe if I remember, I'll put the actual name in the description box, or maybe I'll explain it when I actually start maintaining one for the new year. Just record quotes because there's so many good quotes and so many good ideas, and I'd like to have one place where I keep it. So that's something to think about. Question 4. Have you read a nonfiction book that has challenged your belief and assumptions? Yes, I have. Yes, I have. The book I wanted to share that has changed my beliefs and my assumptions. Oops, I dropped a book while I was trying to get it. My ergonomics here is really bad. It's this book. It's by Peter Mansfield, and it's called A History of the Middle East. And again, discussing the last chapter about annotating, this is a book I actually did annotate. I've got a lot of notes, you can see. This book is changed my outlook and my belief. It's a very interesting, the author has an interesting backstory. That's Peter Mansfield right there. Of course, he's no longer with us. He's deceased. He passed away, and he passed away relatively young. But Peter Mansfield was a bit unique. He was a British embassy civil servant, a diplomat, who was stationed, I believe, in Beirut in Lebanon. And while he was there, he sort of had like an epiphany. He had his beliefs changed, and he started to see that the Western powers, his government, the British government, and to an extent the Americans, this is probably in the 50s and 60s, he saw their, how can I put this diplomatically? He saw their role in the Middle East as pernicious, and he started to have sympathy for the Arabs and the Arab point of view. And he took his criticism of the British and the European and the Western governments, the French, etc., who were, playing around in the politics of the Middle East. He took it so seriously that he quit his job with the British Embassy. He had a very comfortable, cushy job, and he quit. And he got into journalism and writing and started to talk about how the Western powers were essentially, I don't know if raping the Middle East is the right word, but they're although it was the 20th century was post-colonial, especially the post-World War I, post-World War II era was supposed to be post-colonial, but he saw the same colonial actions repeating itself in the post-World War II era, and he highlights it in this book, and he shows how, why the Middle East or the Middle Easterners hate the West. He explains it in this book, and this book changed me because it reinforced, it gave me the ammunition to defend Middle Eastern states, or to defend the Arab point of view against the West, who essentially and still do control the Middle East. For those who don't know, I'm based in the Middle East, in the United Arab Emirates, so this is really close to me personally. But again, Peter Mansfield, he passed away quite young. But this book was so popular. You can see this is the fourth edition, right over there. And it was because it's revised and updated by a colleague of his, Nicholas Pelham, because he died way before. I think he died before September 11th. I think he died before the Gulf War in 1990. He died young, quite a while ago. But his books, again, they're still being printed. I think there's a fifth edition. There's an even more recent one. This one's a battered copy. I think I have another copy, but this is the one I found now for this video. And yeah, this is still very popular. Despite the death of the author, it's still being updated and reprinted and still in print. And for a lot of people who ask me what's a good Middle Eastern book to understand the Middle Eastern perspective in the English language, I recommend this one. So that's my answer for, I believe it was prompt number 3, or was it 4? Where are we? Yeah, that was number 4. Number 5 is, how do you feel about the intersection of storytelling and factual content in nonfiction? I feel very strongly about that. I feel very strongly about that. I really think history, if done well and done with adequate storytelling, could really be much more popular than it is. History gets a bit of a bad rap because it's boring, and it could be boring if you've got dense textbooks or a lot of just factual text with very little storytelling. Then yeah, it can become boring and it repels people from reading history. But if history is done well, it's the story of mankind. So how could you not be interested in it? What happened before us? It's infinitely exciting, I think, at least. And we see that a lot. I mean, there's even fiction books, fantasy and science fiction books. A lot of it draws from history. One example is the Game of Thrones, the George R.R. Martin books. It's about competing rival dynasties who are fighting for power and control. And George R.R. Martin based that on an actual historical era. It was the British in English history, the War of the Roses from the Middle Ages, from the I think the 15th century it was. He used that as an inspiration, and even the names like the House of Lannister and House of he used that as an inspiration, is what I'm trying to say, and that history can even inform some of the greatest stories of, because Game of Thrones became a very popular Netflix TV series, and the books as well, but it used history again as a basis and as an inspiration for the story. And that intersection of history and then making history a story is something I'm very interested in. It'd be a dream for me to write scripts of historical documentaries, but to make it like a series, like an HBO TV show or a Netflix series. That I find it really fascinating. And if it's done well, we see it all the time. There was a Vikings show. There's a whole bunch of them that uses history as a storyboard, as a storyboard for telling a story. I wanted to highlight a couple of books that I have to reinforce the point. This first book I showed quite recently on my channel. This is by Nelson Johnson. It's Boardwalk Empire. Sorry about the glare. But this one I discussed. This is a very boring book. This is a book about New Jersey politics, the politics of New Jersey. So it's really boring, and if you read it, it's really boring. It's talk about Atlantic City. They talk about New Jersey in general. But what the people at at HBO, because you can see here it says the true story that inspired the HBO series. The good people at HBO just took a portion of this book discussing Atlantic City during the Prohibition and turned it into a very popular, it's dated now, but it was a very popular TV series, I think, on, yeah, HBO, starring Steve Buscemi as the main character, who was Nucky Thompson, who was sort of like the mayor, the head, the top dog in Atlantic City, who was running all the bootlegging alcohol and casinos and dance clubs and yeah, the whole Prohibition era. So taking a very bland, very boring book, but turning it into a very interesting TV show. That's the intersection. What was the prompt? The intersection of storytelling and nonfiction. That's an excellent example. Another example. Inspired by Andrew at you could be reading more. He talks a lot about Australian politics, Australian politicians. I wanted to highlight this because I studied in Canada, and Canada is similar to Australia. It's a sort of British Commonwealth country, but it's not. I mean, Australia, people know about Australia. Canada is always overshadowed by its giant southern neighbor, its big brother to the south, the United States. So people know very little about Canada, Canadian politics, Canadian history. This book I wanted to highlight and has a similar sort of it's similar to the this Boardwalk Empire book that I just showed. This one is by Conrad Black, and it's called Render unto Caesar, and the subtitle is The Life and Legacy of Maurice Duplessis. There is Maurice Duplessis. This is about Quebec politics in the 1930s, the 1940s, and the 1950s. So that period before the Second World War and immediately after. Again, big book, and this is actually an abridgment. I think Conrad Black originally wrote it in two volumes, but it was so dense that he made this one a 1 volume, more readable version. And even this is still, if you know nothing about Quebec, you're probably not going to enjoy this at all. However, because I studied in Quebec and I had a bit of background, and when I was there, I took a couple of courses on Quebec history and Canadian history. I really enjoyed this, and I think this guy Maurice Duplessis has a fascinating life. He has very similar to the Nucky Johnson from Atlantic City. He's a sort of politician, corrupt, bachelor, kind of plays a sort of bad guy kind of role, but that's what makes it so interesting. This could easily. It could be turned into a sort of TV series, just like the Boardwalk Empire book. Definitely, this is an example of dense nonfiction of a very obscure part of the world, which, with the right storytelling, with the right kind of presentation, could be a really fascinating, very entertaining story. Of course, Conrad Black, for those who don't, he's a neocon, who was a conservative Canadian newspaper owner. His empire wasn't just in Canada, he was also big in the United States. I think he owned one of the Chicago newspapers. He had a big media empire. He got into a bit of legal trouble, but again, he's more of a right-winger, more of a conservative right-winger. I think it was Donald Trump who pardoned him because he went to jail for, I forget the exact charge, but so he takes a sympathetic view because Maurice Duplessis was more of a conservative, definitely a conservative, but a conservative in Quebec. And anybody who knows about Quebec, it's the French part of Canada. It's very unique in North America, a unique part of North America that's not like anywhere else in North America. I'd love to get into more detail. Maybe I'll make a separate video because this video is already going too long and I need to hurry it up. I'll make a separate video talking about this because it's really really interesting. I'll just say he was right wing, and he was, again, the 1930s. There was the World War II. There was the fascistic moment, Mussolini, Hitler, etc., etc. And Duplessis almost fits the mold. I've been recently reading this, Michael Burley, or I recently finished this. It's Michael Burley's Sacred Causes, where he talks about the dictators that emerged out of Europe in the between the two world wars, and a lot of them, if you list them, Mussolini in Italy, Hitler in Germany, um, what's his name, the guy in Spain. Oh, I'm forgetting now. Generalissimo. His name escapes me. I have to know. There's Salazar in Portugal, Franco in Spain, and then there were other fascistic dictators. Tiso in Slovakia, who was a Catholic priest, and the fascists in Croatia, the Ustaše fascists in Croatia. Again, their leader, the name escapes me. I should know, but I forgot. And then Vichy France, which was here. There's a picture. This was a propaganda poster from Vichy France, and it says "Légion Français, la Révolution famille," with a very religious, healthy family life. So Vichy, the pro sort of Nazi part of France, their slogan was, "This is what France would look like if there was no revolution. If we had stayed Catholic, if we had stayed, we had kept the royal family and the conservative, a sort of right-wing conservative view of the world." But why I bring this up is because all those dictators out of Europe that emerged were mostly Catholic. Hitler, Mussolini, Tiso, the guy in Croatia whose name escapes me, Salazar, Franco, all of them. Tiso in Slovakia was a priest. He was a Catholic priest, cardinal. He was who ruled the country during World War II and was very pro-Nazi. Maurice Duplessis, he's similar, French Canadian, Catholic, right wing, and there were certainly there you can see very very pro religious. Quebec, again, I need to make a separate video. I'm getting this taking too long, and it's getting bogged down, and it's complicated, but trust me, I'm doing a bad job of selling it, but it's a good story. It's a good story. So I'll leave it there, and then I'll make a separate video explaining Quebec politics. And then one more, a book I wanted to mention on this subject, because recently JJ, the booktube blacksmith, she hauled this book and said she's going to read this book soon. And this is a book I really strongly recommend. I highly enjoyed this book. And again, it's the intersection of history, nonfiction with storytelling. This is by Candice Millard, and it's called Destiny of the Republic. The subtitle is A Tale of Madness, Medicine, and Murder of a President. And the president is this guy. And maybe, I don't know if you don't know who this is, but this is President Garfield, an obscure 19th century US president who was murdered. I think he was the first, no, Lincoln was murdered before him, but he was also assassinated. But this is an excellent book, and this could definitely become a TV series with a smart, or a movie with a smart, somebody who can transfer this story into text, because just the name, the subtitle, Madness, Medicine, and Murder. What more do you need in a good story? But again, it's history, it's a true story, and it's really, really good. Candice Millard is a good author. She's very well, her books do really well. They're always big sellers. She's written a biography, I think, of Churchill. She's got a book about Teddy Roosevelt's voyage to the Amazon. She's got a whole bunch of books, a very talented author. So, but that's again another good example of storytelling and history that I wanted to highlight. Let's go to the next problem, number 6. Is there a topic you wish authors would explore? Yes, there is. I had the book. Okay, I have it here. My books for this prompt are all over the place. I've mentioned this before. Again, regulars of this channel will know me ranting on and on about this subject, but it is an important subject. I'll show the book first, and I'll give a quick explanation. The book is by Riva Specter Simon, and the book is called Iraq Between the Two World Wars. And then the subtitle is The Militarist Origins of Tyranny. So this is a subject I wish authors would cover more. If people read about the Middle Eastern history, they're discussing the early, right after World War I, T.E. Lawrence, Gertrude Bell, those sort of people, right at the beginning and the formation of the Arab states. And then there's the other, when people are reading, especially about Iraq, when they're reading about Iraq, it's either the early T.E. Lawrence period, which is just after the First World War, or it's the very modern stuff, the war, the U.S. invasion to remove Saddam Hussein, books about the first Gulf War when Iraq invaded Kuwait. There's a lot of American Western books about those two periods. But between World War I, let's say the 1920s or the 1930s, until the rise of Saddam Hussein in the 1970s, there's that whole period, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s in Iraqi history that people don't know about, and they should. Americans should know about it, British too, the Westerners, because they've invaded that country about 4 times in the last 20 years. So you'd expect them to know more about it, especially when they wanted to do nation building and bring democracy to Iraq. If you wanted to do that, that's all well and good. But if you don't have any background, then you're gonna mess up, and that's what they did. They did mess up. They bungled it. They could have done better. Let's just put it that way. So this book covers that period between the two world wars, and again, it's also Iraq now is a democracy. People want to know how to predict what an Iraqi democracy would look like. Using the Saddam Hussein period is not a good historical background, because that was a one-man tyrannical dictatorship. But Iraq between the two world wars had a parliament, it had political parties, it had all these issues, and that's probably the best historical guide we have to understanding the new Iraqi democracy is reading and learning about Iraq during the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, and the 50s, and the 60s to an extent. So this is the book I would recommend. And again, if any of this talk about Iraq is interesting, I just want to highlight, I started a Substack channel, a Substack page, and I've only got 2 articles there, but those articles are free. You can subscribe, and it's totally free. The first book I wrote was about comparing the assassination in the French Revolution with the assassination of Charlie Kirk in the United States. But I just posted recently a second article, and it's about the elections in Iraq that happened just a couple of weeks ago. A democratic election to elect the federal parliament of Iraq. So if you're interested in that, please do check out my Substack. I'll link it in the description, and I'd appreciate it if you check it out. But let's move on for now to the next prompt, which is number 7. Do you incorporate insights from nonfiction into your daily life? That's a tough one, because again, I read mostly history when we're talking about nonfiction and biography. In your daily life, I mean, there are lessons you can learn, but history is very grand narratives that it discusses big, overarching events. So to use it in your daily life, I kind of struggled when I saw this question. I really don't have an answer. So again, also to save time, but also I couldn't find something specific. So I'm going to skip this one, if you'll allow me. And then the final prompt is number 8. Choose just one book from your nonfiction collection to highlight. And for this, again, one book, you can see these shelves, and then there's symmetrically, just parallel to these shelves, exactly the same amount of books on this side, which you can't see. So to pick one was very difficult, but I picked one again, uh, just to highlight, but it's one I also highly recommend, a book I really enjoyed reading. And again, it's related to Iraq because Iraq is on the mind. That's where I traveled to recently when I took my hiatus, and I wrote the article on Substack, so it's all in my head now. But this is Ancient Iraq. This is by Paul Krivacek, and it's called Babylon. The subtitle is Mesopotamia and the Birth of Civilization. This is a really good book. Krivacek just goes through Mesopotamia, ancient Mesopotamia, and why it's important. But he's really a very talented writer, and he links Mesopotamian history with the Bible in very interesting ways. Because what is the Bible other than Mesopotamian folk tales put into words? Really, if you want to be crass about it. So again, there's pictures of the artifacts and then the maps of the Mesopotamia. I think that's upside down. Oops, I dropped the books. The books that I was stacking just fell. But anyway, I think it's upside down. Yeah, so that's the ancient cradle of civilization, as it's called. So I would highlight this book. I could have picked 100 books, but I chose this one. And I think anybody who has an interest in ancient history would enjoy this. So I'd highlight that one. Again, I'm drowning in fallen books, but I'll wrap this up. I think, yeah, I've answered all the prompts. The last prompt is to tag some people. For this, I'm going to tag JJ. I know JJ has tagged me on a couple of tags while I was away. I don't know if I'm going to get to them. I'll try. I can't promise, but I'll try. But in the meantime, I'll tag her on this one. I'd love to get her answers to this tag. Angelina, I'm going to tag Angelina. I always tag Angelina. She's also taking a hiatus from BookTube. I don't know if she'll ever be back, but if she's ever back and she wants to do this tag, consider yourself tagged. Who else do I want to tag? I want to tag Alex at the I'm gonna forget his the Unabashed Reader. The Unabashed Reader. Alex, I'm very jealous of Alex because he started his reading career reading fantasy and science fiction, but then slowly he started to branch out, and then we co-opted him into the dark side. He saw the power of the dark side, and now he's quite a prolific non-fiction reader. So I'd love to get his answers on this if he wants to do this tag. There was another booktuber who recently I came across, Jeff at Reading Still Matters, but he's done this tag, so maybe I'll link to his video doing this tag. But yeah, there's no point of tagging him and making him do it again. But check out his channel. Another mainly history reader, a great channel. And then maybe I'll tag, there's another one, it's another Jeff. This one is Jeffrey Reads History. He makes shorter videos. I don't know if he does tags, but I'll tag him. And if he wants to do it, Jeffrey, consider yourself tagged. But yeah, 45 minutes, almost 45 minutes later. Again, I always ramble and ramble and ramble. So I'm going to end this. I'm going to thank you for watching it. I'm going to tell you again to check out my Substack if you would like. Again, it's free. I'd like to thank Andrew at You Could Be Reading More for tagging me. I'll link his video, his version of this below. And I'll wrap this up, BookTube. Thank you so much. Salute.